What's going on, guys, and thanks again for being here. And today I'm reviewing another brand new release from GVM. This is the GVM SD200R, which is a bicolor and RGB, and of course it's got some effects here. And as usual, I'm gonna show you guys everything that you need to know about this light, so stay tuned, don't go anywhere, I'll be right back. And the usual disclaimer, GVM sent me this light for me to test it out. I don't get paid to say anything here. This video is not sponsored by GVM, and all my words and opinions are my own. So the first thing I want to talk about here to get this thing knocked out of the way, I want to talk about the fan noise here, which I'm sure that's the first thing you guys want to hear besides even the brightness of the light. So right now I have a condenser super cardioid microphone very close to the light, pointing at my mouth and at this light here. The proper place for the light to be, of course, is actually in the back here where the softbox is, right? So right now with the microphone pointing here, this is the actual fan noise that you hear right now. The light is right now at 1%, but it is actually right now at a very low speed, which is pretty decent. So here's the 10 seconds so you guys can hear what's going on. And this is actually with the fan off. So what I want to see GVM doing is to finally put a way to actually switch off the fan here, because most lights from other brands, they actually are, up the game with that stuff. So I don't know why GVM doesn't do this. So just put a limitation here, so you can't crank it up to more than maybe 25%, 30%, whatever they think or decide the safety thing here will be. And then if you want to crank it up to 100%, simply go to the back of the menu here, or the app even, turn on the fan or off, and then the fan is going to be spinning, however number of RPM it needs to cool this light off here. But I really want to see GVM putting the fan off option here, because this is going to be solving a lot of problems, and I believe these lights are going to sell even better, because for interviews like this, we don't actually need the whole 200 watts, especially for a small interview set. In this example here, the softbox is actually placed 3 feet away, but most of us, we love shooting at apertures like f2.8, f1.8, or even f1.4. So we need probably 10 watts here. So it would be very good if GVM actually implement the idea here, both on the application and also on the menu settings here, to be able to shut off the fan. Now let's crank this up to 100% and see what happens with the fan here. It's gonna actually pick up speed. Let's see how fast that will take for this to happen. So I'm gonna stop the camera here. I'll be right back as soon as this fan actually picks up speed. So this is the actual fan noise of the light. It's not that bad. No, I'm just kidding. This is the this is just the air cleaner here. Just, oh good. Go back to serious here. So this fan here has been on for like 15 minutes, and I don't hear any extra noise here. Pretty much was the same amount of fan noise before. So for a 200 watt light, it's actually pretty quiet right here. And again, for a proper setting for an interview, this is not the place for the light to be. It's supposed to be on the back there with the softbox, right? So this is what it sounds like at this distance right here. So I'm gonna give you the silent mode right here again. No fan. And then back to fan. So I'm assuming most of you guys, of course, know how to properly use a microphone, and also the choice of the microphone. For example, I'm using a super cardioid microphone here. It's a very directional microphone and a very narrow pickup pattern, in which this is the microphone, or even a shotgun. Now, if you want to use lavaliers for interview, that's fine, but keep in mind that most of lavalier microphones, they are omnidirectional, which they pick up sound from 360 degrees all over the place. And you should use microphones like this here, this type, which is a super cardioid or hypercardioid condenser microphones, or shotguns, because when I speak like this here, you can see my voice is like very far away, and then when I come back here, it sounds like this, right? So if I am in the back here, for example, my audio will sound like this here. So this will be the light in the back here. And then when I go back in the front here, that's when you hear the majority of the noise, which this light happens to be right here. So the light should be this way, and the microphone should be that way. So I'm gonna show you guys now the fan noise with the microphone this way. It's a big difference, right? Now let's talk about the little knickknacks here. When you actually install this reflector here, you wobble just a little bit, but not horribly. As you expect, most reflectors or most Bowens mount lights should be this way here. When you move the light, it doesn't rattle all over the place. Again, just a little bit. I like the fact that they actually provide this little strap here to mount the power supply on a stand, because before I had to create my own here, buying some of those velcros and some self-adhesive furniture pads. So I'm actually glad that they actually include this thing here with every single GVM SD series that you buy. And the body of the light is mostly made of plastic with the exception of the fan vents right here, top and bottom. These are metal aluminum. The same thing with the yoke here. This whole thing is made of metal aluminum, including the part that mounts on your light stand here. The screw is also metal with the exception of the actual handle here, which is made of plastic. Same thing with this here. Another thing they improved here big time is the actual micro little teeth here that they actually started to make here, because the older GVM lights, they usually put a little rubber in between. So when you actually put a big soft box here, this light is going to actually tend to droop or sag. Not anymore, because this teeth here is very secure, and even the biggest modifiers, for example, I have a Godox QRP120, which is 120 centimeters, which is about 4 feet wide. It's a huge modifier. This light has no problem whatsoever holding that modifier. The older GVM lights, guess what happens? So I actually made a little modification there. I got a grinder, a metal grinder there, and I just redesigned the whole thing, and it's actually behaving just like this now. When you actually mount your modifiers here, you're going to be very happy, because once you set this thing at a particular angle, it will stay. My release here came with a little bit of a problem here, so it stays like that, but you know, it's a minor little thing. It doesn't mean yours is going to come that way, but if it does, all you have to do is to come here and put it back the way it was before, and then when you actually install the reflector here, it does click back. Just sometimes when you actually eject, actually every time. So it gets stuck here, so you come here and do this. So to me it's a small annoyance, but I wish this wasn't happening here. Now a little discussion here between metal and plastic. I actually like a little bit of plastic. Actually, in this case here, there's a lot of plastic going on, but I actually shoot a lot of things outside, especially in the winter cold. I live in Pennsylvania, so you know how winter is here. It's pretty disgusting in January and all. So when I actually handle this light outside, knowing that I'm actually touching plastic here, it feels a lot better in my hands, and I can't wear gloves because, you know, my fingers can move the same way. So, you know, I appreciate the plastic in that situation. So between plastic and metal, again, if you actually let this light fall or bang it somewhere, the plastic is gonna scratch or maybe crack depending on the size of the fall, right? Now, metal made lights here, for example, the aluminum is gonna either scratch or crush, you know, especially the corners there. So they both can be a bad thing. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love everything made of metal, because I have some high-end lights here. Those things are super freaking heavy. They're very expensive, and the whole thing is made of metal. Even the power cable is made of metal, if you will. But a little plastic here doesn't bother them that much, which also makes the light slightly more affordable, because if they start to make this whole thing back to metal again, this light is going to cost at least $100 more, maybe $150 more. So what you're getting out of this light here is the actual 200 watts, including the RGB. How many lights of this price out there with a cob chip can you actually find that has RGB as well for this type of price here? So again, 200 watts, very nice bright light, and made of plastic, no big deal. Another cool thing here, I actually like the 1%, because when I actually place the RGB here, it barely touches my skin here. So if you want to shoot something that requires a high ISO, or something that somehow you need to do a very gentle amount of light here, such as time-lapse photography, astro time-lapse, which you actually have to set up the camera for a 30-second exposure. And if you need to put this back to CCT, either the warm or the daylight colors, to shine a little bit of light to tree, so you don't actually just expose the sky there, in case your time-lapse involves a little tree branch or whatever, you know, this can actually be very useful here. So you can have it set to 1% all the way to a lot of RGB of the whole 200 watts, which, by the way, don't think the RGBs, they use the whole 200 watts, because they will never reach their hand. And besides, each color, they consume different amounts of power here. This applies to every single RGB, even the super expensive panels there. Now when you set this light to CCT, that's another story, because especially when you actually crank this up to 100% and around the 5000 Kelvin or 54, 52, that's when this light is going to be consuming the entire 200 watt range. And I've seen this lights actually consuming beyond the 200. For example, the 150 watts here can go 170 something, and this might be even, you know, 240 some or 230 some watts. But again, the RGB, they always consume less power, and the CCT are the most power consuming modes here. Now, if you already have several of these lights or plan to buy a bunch of these lights here, or at least 2 or 3, make sure you keep each light's power supply near the box, or put a label right here, because they all range in different voltages and wattage and everything. So the 300 watts is going to require a 9 or 10 amp power supply. And then if you actually mix and match with the power supply, putting this one here in a 300 watt light, it's not going to work properly. You're even going to damage the power supply, and the light is not going to output the 300 watts, because that's the wrong power supply, right? So make sure you keep this power supply with this light here and the 300 watt or whatever other lights you have. So make sure you label this thing here to make sure you don't actually mix any power supply with the other lights. So the plastic on this lights here is a decent plastic, is durable enough, but don't expect it to be a techno-polymer plastic such as what Lupo makes with their high-end lights. If you treat this light with a minimum of care and respect, the light is also going to respect you back. Now I'm going to show you guys here the master slave. The GVM SD200R is set to master and the SD200R is set to slave. Don't forget that this is actually a 200 watt light and this is a 150 watt light, so there's a power difference in there. Now even if you have 8 of those lights, for example, set one of them as the master and the other one set to slave. And keep in mind that, you know, these are RGB lights, and if you actually have a GVM SD200S, for example, any light that's not RGB, when you try to do the master slave, those lights, they are not going to communicate well with each other because they will be incompatible, so it doesn't work that way. But on the application, if you want to operate the lights individually, you can actually mix and match RGBs and non-RGB GVM lights. So since they are the same, besides the wattage difference, 200 watts and 150 watts, they work exactly the same. So turn them off, so they mimic everything the one is doing. And they actually change and update very fast whatever it is that you're doing here. I'm gonna set this to 25% right now. And you press and hold this button, it's gonna take you to the HSI, and press it again to control the actual colors. And as you can see, there's no jumping of any kind, everything is very smooth. And they update relatively quickly. Now the same thing to access the effects, whether you're operating this light as a standalone or with the master slave thing going on here, just press and hold the button, it takes you to the effects. As you can see, there's a slight delay there. I've seen sometimes they actually synchronize it pretty good, maybe it's a matter of luck, but you can actually expect a little delay here. So when you're actually using effects like this, it can actually be cooler because it adds more effects, as you can see there. There's a little bit delay in synchronization there, but you know, it is what it is. Then to get out of here, press and hold as you would with this light as a standalone. It goes back to the CCT. Dim your light, whatever you want to do. Don't forget to make sure this is actually set to app, otherwise your application on your phone will not detect the light. Now keep in mind, if you're actually running multiple of these lights here and they're all set to app, for example, because you can actually control these lights individually, but they have to be logged in one at each time. So if you actually have this one here set to app, you can also set the other one set to app as well, instead of a slave. So all the lights can actually be set to app, right? So for example here on the top left side of the application here, every time you click on switch device, you're gonna see all the lights listed here with the MAC address. As long as this light here, every other light is set to application, they're all gonna be popping up there. If you set this light off app and this one only as the app, only this MAC address is gonna be visible here. So right now, this is the case that's happening here. Only this MAC address is actually enabled with this app right now. The light is actually working as a slave, so it doesn't matter. So you can actually turn off the lights, you can do all this stuff here. Now the thing with the channels here, as you can see, they are operating on channel 1 and channel 1, for example, right? So they both can be turned off and all. You can actually change the intensity here and everything. So if you actually happen to change the channel on the app here, this light, which is set to app, is gonna update automatically the channel. Now when actually, for example, turn off this light, this is not responding because it's still set to channel 1. So right now you have it set to channel 2. Simply update here. As long as it is set to app or slave, you actually update the channel manually there, and then you can still control both lights simultaneously, as you can see. So let's put this light set to channel 4. Put this light to channel 4. And again, you can control all of them together again. It's very simple. You can actually go to the HSI and do everything here. So let's switch back to channel 1 and update the channel here to channel 1, and you can still resume your work right here. And over here you have the scene, which is the effects and all. You can choose whatever effect that you want here. So I think most of the stuff they really need to do with this app here, I actually have demonstrated here. So the other little knickknacks thing, it doesn't really matter. So, you know, this should be a complete mini tutorial right here. Now next, what I'm going to do is to also set this light as app. They go app here and app there. So you can control these lights individually, as you can see. As long as you set this to app and app, you can do that. If you set this to slave and app, you can only control this light by imitating the other ones. So again, set everything to app, you can control like, you know, a gazillion different lights here. The one thing that GVM really needs to change is the MAC addresses. For example, if you have like, 6 lights right here and you want to control them individually. So here's the list of MAC addresses. You have this light right here and this one here and this one here, right? So this is what happens. The remote control you see in the middle here represents this light right here, right? It shouldn't move. So every time you control a different light, the MAC addresses, they're going to be switching places like this. The actual list, the numbers, they move like that. I don't understand why this is going on. So they need to fix in order that, once you actually log in all the lights here, the list of MAC addresses, they should stay where they are, not doing this here. It's very annoying. But with the MAC addresses changing, it's virtually impossible unless, again, you actually put a piece of tape there to whatever number that's different over there, so you can identify, like, A8 is this one, F19 is that one, B64 is this one here. You get what I'm saying? And here's the actual case. It comes with this very nice and elegant material here, similar to what Godox is making. And here's what you find inside. I already kind of unpacked this, but it comes with this shipping protecting material here to prevent the reflection from getting bent. But it also comes wrapped with this bubble wrap right here. And the light actually comes wrapped on this. And of course this to prevent humidity. Here's the paperwork in which you can actually download the whole manual right here. But you don't need the manual because I'm here just for that. And this is supposed to go right here to prevent the light from bouncing around the case. And here's the reflector, in which is the type they now make for these lights here, which does a very good job in reflecting light. Some of these reflectors, they might project a little bit of a hot spot, but I've seen many reflectors, including other brands, that do the same exact thing. And here's what they call a diffuser, but I usually only use this as a protective cap for the LEDs when I'm actually not using the light, or if the light is outside the case. I don't feel comfortable blasting a 200 watt power here with this little cap going on because it creates a lot of heat trapped on the actual LED bulb. And here's the actual power cord. Make sure you actually put it back in the same diameter here, so when you put the reflector back, it will fit just fine, just like this here. And they also include now this type of a mount here for the power supply, so you no longer need to attach velcros or duct tape or anything like that. And here's the actual power supply. And one thing to notice here, when you actually buy several of these lights, the 300 watt, 200 watt, 150 or whatever, make sure you have the correct power adapter when you actually store this back on the case, because they vary. The 300 watt comes with a 9 amp, this is a 7 amp, also the voltage varies as well. And the actual plug here, don't worry, because there's no wrong way to actually insert in the back of the light. You only can go in one way. And it also features a lock here, so this stays secure and doesn't get unplugged. And here's the actual light. As you can see, the majority of its body is made of plastic, which also makes the light lighter and less expensive, and also is great for winter time because I don't like to touch metal. However, the top and bottom part here, this is actually made of metal. And here's the actual back of the light, pretty simplistic. Just plug on the power here and fire it up. Now, one cool thing that they added this light here, I never seen this before on the other SD series from GVM. They actually installed a glass now, which means when you actually take this outdoors, you're not going to have any bugs from staining or damaging your cob chip here, or from getting burned in here. Just to show you here, this is the SD200R and this is the SD150 R. And here's a quick comparison with the cob chip. This is the SD200R and this is the SD150 R. So they look slightly different here, and also larger LEDs. And here's the back of the light. Power it on. And here you have several settings: rotate, slave, master, the app. You need to make sure this light is set to app right here as well when you're actually using the GVM II app. Otherwise, the application is not going to detect this light. And lastly, you have the DMX, which I don't use. Before, this jacks didn't exist here. Now, either on rotate or master, you can actually control from here the actual intensity here, from 0 to 1% increments all the way to 100%, and very quickly. To change the color temperature here, simply tap this quickly. Now you can control the Kelvin temperature in 100 degree Kelvin increments all the way to 7500 degrees Kelvin. Now keep in mind, this particular light here, if you are setting to 5600 degrees Kelvin, this light is actually a little bit too warm for that. So I would set it to about 7000 Kelvin, and that should be very close to the actual 5600 degrees Kelvin. Other than this, in this model here, everything else works as they should. Another thing to notice here, not including GVM but other brands that I've seen as well, this is a common thing. For example, since this is a bicolor light on the CCT here, on the 2700 degrees Kelvin, when you actually go in the middle with the two, about 5000, 5100 degrees Kelvin, somewhere here, you notice that the light is actually almost twice as bright, because both LEDs, the cold and the warm ones, they're on, and as you reach the cooler side of the light, is the same exact thing that you see when you are all the way to the other extreme right here. Now, to change the channel here, the master or rotate will not allow you to do that, so you have to press the mode button here. So the application also works. So from channel 1 to channel 12, in which here you can actually change the channel. And also the slave, you can also do the same exact thing. When you are here, for example, you can only change the color temperature or the actual intensity here, but no channels. You have to go to the app or the slave, as you can see here. Press and hold this button, it takes you to the HSI. And here's the intensity. To actually change the colors, quickly press this button, and then you can actually do this here. And as you can see, everything is extremely smooth. There's no jumping, it's pretty much stepless. Look how smooth the whole color transition is in the background there. You can go fast as well, just as smooth. When you quickly tap the button, you can actually control the saturation from 100% all the way down to 0. Press and hold the button again, it's going to take you to the effects. Now quickly tap this button, you can actually control the intensity of the effect. Quickly tap again, you can actually go back to changing the effects that you like. You also notice that some of these effects here, for example, this particular one here, the number 5, you can actually change the color temperature here. So right now in the effects page, quickly tap this button, again you control the intensity, and then press this again, you control the color temperature. So this effect, if you want, can be warmer or anywhere in between. Press and hold again, it takes you back to the CCT page. So again, CCT, press and hold, HSI, press and hold, takes you back to the CCT page. Alright, so on my left here I have the SD200R, and right here is the SD150R. So I have this light both equally placed exactly 1 meter off the projection screen right there. And I also have a light meter here with the ISO set to 800. None of this stuff matters here. As long as the f-stops reach the same, what I try to do here, first of all, to show you guys, is the actual intensity between the 200 watt and the actual 150 watt here. So this light right here is set to 10% at 2700 degrees Kelvin, and this one here is set at 38% at 2700 degrees Kelvin, because this is actually a 150 watt versus the 200, right? So this light is actually showing f16.1, and this one here at 38%, it needs to be that intensity to show same exact reading here. So this is the brightness difference that you're getting for your money between the 200R and the 150R. As you can see, there's a color difference here. This appears to be a lot warmer than this one here. And this one here is slightly cooler. So this one I'm gonna set the way it is, and let's eyeball it here. Let's see if we can actually make this 2800 degrees Kelvin. Now they seem to be at the same color temperature. It's about 100 degree-ish Kelvin off here. So right now let's see what happens when it's set to 7500 degrees Kelvin, and the same thing for this one here. Alright, in this case here, it looks like they're both doing the same thing, except that this one here is slightly towards the magenta side, and this one here is slightly towards the green side. I actually have owned this light a couple months before, and I actually used this light for a few hours. So maybe that's why it's actually reading a little green, because when you actually buy a brand new LED, most of them out of the package is going to be actually always showing a magenta cast or tint. So put a few hours on this light here, so it should go back to green, but I would say it takes at least, I don't know, many hours. I don't know how long, but eventually this is gonna actually go back to green. So let's see what this thing looks like at 5600 degrees Kelvin, and the same thing for this here. This one here is slightly warmer and greener, and this one here is slightly cooler and more magenta. So when I reviewed the SD150R, I think it's less than 2 months ago, to set the color temperature to daylight, which is 5600 degrees Kelvin, to an acceptable color, I had to set this light to about 7000 to 7100 degrees Kelvin. Alright, here's the test that I want to make. It's kind of difficult for me to look at the monitor there because I have these lights blasting in my eye right here. So I'm actually going to be turning off both lights right now. So right now I'm actually going to be turning on the SD200R. The camera is set to 5600 degrees Kelvin, and this is what the color temperature looks like here. And over here is the Godox SL60W, which I know it is very much on par with 5600 degrees Kelvin. So as you guys know, this light is locked as daylight only, and this is a RGB and bicolor. So right now, turning this light on, both set to 5600 degrees Kelvin, it looks like this here. This side looks like this, and this side looks like this here. Godox SL60W, GVM SD200R. Alright, so just this light right here is set to 5600 degrees Kelvin, which we already know it is way too warm here. So let's try this. 56, 57, 58, 59, 6000, 61, 62, 63, 64, 5, 6, 7, 8, 6900, and then 7000, and then just one more, 71. And of course, anything above this is going to be actually too cool, right? But I know the GVM SD150 R at 7000 degrees Kelvin, it looks like as close as possible to what this light looks like as far as color temperature and as far as what daylight should look like. So the next test that I'm doing here is to crank this up to 100% and to see what you get with this light at 1 meter away from the projection screen. So the first test with the bare bulb, let's crank this up to 100%. The light is at 1 meter away from the projection screen here, and let's see what we get. It's about f16.3, ISO 800 with a frame rate of 30 frames per second. Now with the reflector on, same distance, let's see what we get here. From 16.3, it's going to jump to f45.2. Now if you want to see what this looks like with all the types of ISO here, 640 will look like this, 500, 400, 320, 250, 200, 160, and 100. So it will be about 16.2. Now as I move the light with the projector there, on the very corners there, I don't think we have any problems with the weird colors going on or color fraying, so everything looks good. And as usual, most of these reflectors that I've seen here, they always create a little bit of a hot spot in the center here, but this is not too bad. I've seen others that are actually a lot worse. So again, with the light meter, let's see what kind of readings we have from the hot spot to the actual corners of the light there. So right here in the center, we're getting F16, there you go, F16. And then moving over here, we don't even have a drop of an f-stop yet, which is good. So it's about, 3/4 of an f-stop or something like that. And then I'll do in a corner here, f8. So as you can see, from here we have f16, and right here we have a f-stop drop of 1 f-stop. So it's only 1 f-stop difference, which means this reflector is doing a good job. It's not like you're having f16 here and then f28 right here, So now as far as eyeballing, it looks like this light is doing a pretty good job at bare bulb, lighting everything evenly over there. So again, let's take some readings there. So right now, f8.4, f8.3, so it's pretty much the same reading here. Nice. Hopefully I'm not gonna block any light here. So it's pretty much the same reading, just a few numbers off here. Maybe the light is a little bit that way, but as you can see, overall, it's pretty much the same reading. So very even illumination. So let's compare the fan noise between the two lights here. This is the SD200R, and the fan noise with the microphone right here, it sounds like this. And then this one sounds like this here. So I'm gonna go back there, a few seconds. So apparently they make the same type of noise, which is relatively quiet, but when you actually have 2, 3, 4 of these at the same time, that's when the fan gets a little louder here. In my opinion, they should actually change on the software here. For example, this is a 200 watt light, fine, it can go 100%, beautiful. In my opinion, GVM should actually incorporate here on the software the ability to shut off the fan, which of course adding the limitation how bright the light can run without the fan, right? So you can do 100%, go all crazy with the light, with the fan on. And then if you want to turn off the fan here, hopefully they're listening to this, and then you're going to be limited to 30% maximum, even though you try to go to the maximum here with the fan off, right? So with the fan off, I don't know, maybe 30% will be the brightest, or the brightest allowed. And then you turn the fan on, and then you can go crazy with 100% with the fan on. For interviews, if you can actually kill the fan here temporarily, and again, limited the amount of brightness that this light can output with the fan off, all the interviews we're doing or a very quiet set, bring the light a little bit closer, and then no fan at all. I really want to see GVM doing this here, because they need to step up the game, because every other brand has the ability to kill the fan, but GVM right now does not have the ability to shut off the fan. Hopefully they will consider doing this. So that's what I got for the review of this light. So I hope you like the content that I provided here. If you want to subscribe to this channel, that'll be awesome. And if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them down in the comment section. I'll respond to everything that I see there. And again, if you want to support the channel, if you want to use my affiliated links from Amazon and B&H, they don't cost you anything extra to you. And once again, thank you always for being here and for your time watching these videos. And I'll see you next time.